So we finally have a verdict. The jury's been in deliberation since, 1 o'clock local time, Monday afternoon. They finally popped their head out of their little hole there at around 12:30 local time today and delivered a verdict which, you know what, shouldn't come as too much of a surprise. It's not necessarily lawful. Didn't necessarily follow the guidelines of having the state prove any sort of reckless behavior on Kim Potter's behalf, but what's happening right now? So Kim Potter's probably going to be going away for up to 25 years because she's guilty on both verdicts, or rather on both counts. She was found guilty on both, and that was the verdict from the jury. And kind of sucks for them, I guess. Realistically, it looks like that second closing that Matthew Frank delivered, the objection of the defense, quite likely so, where he was purposely muddying up the definition of what is legally reckless, because like I've stated before in a couple of the other videos doing recaps on this stuff, the difference between legally reckless is you have to have a conscious disregard that what you are doing has risks to it. You disregard those risks and then you proceed with the action otherwise, okay? Or when you're being charged recklessly with manslaughter, well, you have to understand that what you're going to be doing has a very reasonable degree that is going to be causing death for somebody, and then you have to disregard that. So apparently that's what the jury found on this one. Or they just realized that there was a growing protest that was happening outside and they just wanted to appease the mob. Long and short of it is, if you don't want to be sticking around for the rest of the video and you're just here for the first minute or so, I completely understand. Don't know how long this is going to go. It's probably going to be a long one, all things considered. The jury took the conflation of reckless. They just thought that, okay, hey, somebody's dead on this one. Somebody's got to pay for it. So we got Christmas dinner to go to, and Kim Potter, she can go to a cell because that's where she's going to be for, well, we'll know more at the end of January because I guess the sentencing hearing, it's going to be February 18th, because and one of the final things that the defense did after the jury verdict was handed down was they were trying to get her out on the $100,000 bail that she posted in order to be out during the time of the trial, to be, at home for Christmas and then come back for the sentencing hearing and then go to jail for that. But no, ain't gonna fucking happen because old Judge Chu, old ASMR judge, she's like, no, I just can't. We've had previous verdicts come down like this, and even though that's never going to be the case where you're going to find another model citizen like this up until the point of April 11th, where she literally didn't do nothing in the entirety of her life by all accounts, because they couldn't even drag up anything, okay? They couldn't find a single human being on earth who could say a bad thing about Kim Potter. But she might be a flight risk, and this is an aggravated verdict, so we're gonna have to go ahead and cuff you in front of your family, and yes, you're gonna have to be drug off to prison. But it's actually not a bad looking prison, because I got some pictures of the place where she's going to be spending probably the rest of her days, let's be honest, because she's 49 years old. But disappointed because like I said, my gut feeling on this was, oh my god, how the fuck do you not know the difference between your taser and your gun? You shot somebody. That's fucked up. But then you take a look at the law, and then you realize that you have to prove certain things in order to find guilt, or in order to submit a guilty verdict. They just never provided any of that in the trial. The state sure didn't, okay? But this just goes to prove, because this happened in the exact same courtroom of Derek Chauvin in the George Floyd trial. Police officers are going to have a bitch of a fucking time in Minnesota now. This is going to have a ripple effect. This is going to have a trickle-down effect, okay? There's going to be a few taser pulls, okay? Because that's what Kim Potter thought that she was going to be pulling. And that's what she was calling the entire time. There was never, ever once any indication. There was never any pushback from the state that she was pulling her gun and consciously disregarding using her firearm in that situation, okay? They never proved that. They never even alleged it, but they got the guilty verdict on it regardless. So no use crying over spilt milk. Let's get into some of the details. And that's going to be her booking photo. I don't know if somebody was telling a joke at the time because she was absolutely stone-faced when the verdict was being read. There's a lot of things that we don't know, especially when it comes from the jury, and that's something I was asking at the same time when Aaron Eldridge was going in hard on the cross-examination when Kim Potter was up on the stand on the final day of actual testimony in the trial. Last Friday, in fact, she was going in hard, okay? She was being an absolute harpy. She was being cold and heartless. I guess it must have resonated with the jury because then when she came back and did closing arguments for an hour, I guess they were riveted on that one, and maybe that's why she went back up there. I guess maybe her tone, maybe the appeal to authority was really strong with these people. Because I sat through jury deliberations, and it's like, yeah, this is going to be a center-left jury that's up there. 6 women, 6 men, okay? And then the breakdown, I thought I'd seen that up here, yeah. The racial breakdown for whatever that means. 9 white, 2 Asian, 1 black, deliberated for 4 days. Yeah, more or less. But that was the racial breakdown. The sexual breakdown, yeah, women and men, and there was only 2 jury questions during the 4 days of deliberation. And it's kind of funny, and then that came out, Tuesday afternoon? Tuesday at 4:30 p.m. local time, I do believe, if I recall correctly. Yeah, 2 jury questions. What do we do if we're hopelessly deadlocked? So it's like, okay, I guess there was a couple of people who were like, clearly she's not guilty, but they were, I don't know, somehow beaten down into submission in order to submit the 2 guilty verdicts. Or 2 guilty decisions, sorry, I keep mixing shit up. So they were asking, okay, how long do we have to do this shit if we're going to be deadlocked? And then the second one is, can we get the zip ties on that gun taken off so we can hold that firearm in our hands? So it's like, yeah, I guess if we're going to be deadlocked, we need to have a problem solver at our ready. But that was the only thing that the jury asked, okay? Like, there was far more questions in the Rittenhouse trial, and these deliberations went on longer with a far more complicated case, far more complicated charges that were brought, because you remember there was 5 charges in total with a whole bunch of underlying charges as well. But this one, 2 simple manslaughter charges, 28 hours of deliberations. But let's get into this. Ex-Brooklyn Center cop Kim Potter is seen bizarrely grinning from ear to ear in a new mugshot, but there's also another side profile as well where she's just looking fairly dour again. But yeah, this one, I don't really know what's going on, and nor do we really know, because there's probably going to be, well, I might do one on the sentencing if it pops up at the time, but, it's probably going to be the last Kim Potter video that I do, especially for a while. After she was convicted of 1st and 2nd degree manslaughter for shooting 20-year-old Daunte Wright, who was just an absolute saint, and we're going to talk about him a lot more in the second half of this video. So if you want to go ahead and scroll towards that, be my guest. But we'll cover some of the bases here and what's going on outside the courtroom, because yeah, they definitely didn't sway any of the jury members. Nope. Couldn't have possibly been. And depending on the feed you were watching when the verdict came down, you may or may not have been able to hear the protesters from outside the courtroom. I don't know if that would have swayed anybody's opinion, considering they were just deliberating for 28 hours in the vicinity of the courtroom as well. Just saying. Potter, 49, was led away in handcuffs in order to be held without bail ahead of her sentencing in February after being found guilty on all counts at Hennepin County Court on Thursday. Jurors in the dramatic 8-day trial and 5 days of jury selection never forget. Came to a decision after close to 28 hours of deliberation, which they at times had seemed hopelessly deadlocked. That was one of the 2 questions that was ever asked. The jury of 6 and 6, 9 white, 2 Asian, 1 black, alerted the judge that they had reached a verdict shortly before noon on the 4th day of deliberations. Potter remained impassive between her attorneys and did not react throughout the reading of the guilty verdict and the news that she would be taken into custody. She must have already known, because on the feed I was watching, her eyes were looking at the jury members when they were coming up, and one of the, well, it was Robert Barnes who was talking about it at the same time. I was listening to some coverage of his, and it's like, if the jury members are just walking in and they aren't making eye contact with the defendant, that normally means that it's going to be a guilty verdict. And yeah, she didn't seem to be making too much eye contact, so maybe that should have been a little bit of a heads up, but she already was kind of resigned to her fate. One of the jurors wept and shook as the decision was read. Oh, really? Really? Wright's family members let out sighs of each guilty count. Yeah, more on those fat sacks of shit later. As she left the courtroom, her husband, who was present with the couple's sons, shouted, "I love you, Kim." Potter did not react. Yeah, could you imagine just knowing that your life is now just going to be spent at state penitentiary for, well, potentially up to 25 years? Don't really know what it's going to be, but after reading aloud the outcome, Judge Regina Chu, thank God we don't have to hear her ever again, just plod through the reading of everything. Let me click my scroll wheel just a little bit more. I won't for, because it'll just take the article up, but I would just scroll. She was terrible. I hate her. Confirmed with each juror individually, said true and correct verdict. That's just standard procedure, obviously. After Potter was led from the courtroom, prosecutor Aaron Eldridge, exchanged a long hug with a tearful Katie Bryant, Wright's mother and frequent presence at the trial, and with Wright's father. Yeah, well, big ups to her defense counsel, by the way, who was constantly, treating her, like a real human being, unlike Kyle Rittenhouse's defense counsel. And Merrick Richards, I didn't really, hug him or place my hand on Kyle's shoulder or anything like that. I was too busy falling asleep and not objecting to anything. But hey, somehow managed to win the case. So I guess that's more than you can say about Earl Grey and Paul Eng, who still, even though they didn't get probably the correct outcome in this trial, still did a hell of a fucking job, and I definitely recommend them if you ever, please don't find yourself in Minnesota, by the way, especially after this, but if you ever find yourself in need of a defense counsel, you could do 1,000 times worse than those guys. They were terrific. It was the second high-profile conviction of a police officer, won this year by a team led by Keith fucking Ellison, including some of the same attorneys who helped convict Chauvin, yes, Matthew Frank and Aaron Eldridge, yuck. Stepping up to the microphone in a brief press conference following the verdict, Ellison said that Potter had gone from being an esteemed member of the community, an honored member of a noble profession, to a person convicted of a serious crime that you charged erroneously. But hey, you got the victory, right? And that's all that the prosecution is really going for these days. Not justice, they're going for dubs. But according to the AG, Potter's conviction was an important step toward justice. What kind of justice, Keith? Huh? Well, it fell short of ever truly being that. Of course, right? It's an important step, right? You have one life that was ruined a lot because of his own decisions in the matter. And then, the only way that there can be proper justice is by, destroying another family. So, congratulations. That's an important step on that road towards making Minnesota a third world country. Echoing the speech he made following the conviction of Derek Chauvin in March, Ellison explained that this conviction was merely accountability. You can go fuck yourself. Wright's fat mother, Katie Bryant, hugged Ellison and said the verdicts triggered every single emotion you can imagine. Yeah, to be fair, though, she is just about an enormous piece of shit. But it is traumatic to lose a kid. Now just imagine losing a mother at the same time, right before Christmas too. That's fun. Today we got an accountability that could be for asking, we've been asking for from the beginning. Yeah, cool. Once the jury was released, Potter's attorney made the plea to the judge to reconsider the decision to take the ex-cop into custody. Yeah, Paul Eng. It's like, yeah, she's a devoted Catholic. Okay. She's not a risk to the public. Yeah, obviously. You take a look at her previous record. It's like, other than, if you're at the if you're around the holiday Christmas table, for fuck's sakes, Christmas dinner table. Jesus Christ. I'm so done with all of this shit this year. Fuck 2021 in the mouth. Anyways, yeah, unless you're sitting down, having Christmas dinner and somebody happens to say, pass the salt, and then Kim just jokingly passes you the pepper because she can't tell the difference. That's about the only kind of risk to the public that she could possibly be. But don't worry, that's off the table. I mean, she gone. Judge Chu refused to budge, informing both, I cannot treat this case any differently than any other case. I'm sure this is the prototypical case that you face all the time, right? She will now consider from the state regarding the so-called Blakely issues. Yeah, the aggravating factors that they say need to... they say speak for the need for a higher sentence than someone. So now they're just going to try to hump loads of dirt on her grave. Ergo, why she could be facing up to 25 years because of the car accident that happened afterwards. And that's going to be decided by the judge who just, remanded her into custody with Christmas coming up a couple short days from now. That's cool. Yeah, I totally look forward to a nice, honest interpretation of those facts. That was 2 days of the fucking state's case in chief that was just erroneously up there. The maximum prison sentence for first-degree manslaughter is 15 years. Minnesota law sentences defendants only for the most serious conviction when multiple counts. So they get served concurrently. So it's like, okay, why can she face up to 25 years? Because those Blakely issues could add aggravating upward sentencing, so an additional 10 years could be in tow. Which, I don't know. Aggravating factors got added on to Derek Chauvin at the same time, and it's the same, but it's different, right? Because Chauvin, literally nobody would come to that guy's defense. There was countless complaints against him, okay? He knew what he was doing, okay? You can talk about fentanyl, and I've talked about fentanyl a lot, okay, in regards to George Floyd. His knee was somewhere between his neck and his lower back, and maybe his knees a couple of times. It wasn't consistently on the entire time. Whatever, but he did know what he was doing, okay? Did he directly cause his death? He didn't necessarily help it, okay? But yeah, he was the poster boy of all this stuff. So he was going to be facing a political prosecution. There was no way in fuck he was going to get a fair and unbiased jury. I just take a look at that one juror, okay, and the alternate that was on there as well. But especially the one juror who lied on his voir dire form, okay. Have you been to a Black Lives Matter protest before? No. And then he'd go out with his fucking t-shirt on, and he'd be hosting podcasts and some other dumb shit like that, and just saying, oh, I didn't go to a Black Lives Matter rally, but we went to a Black Lives Are Important rally in Washington, D.C. a couple months before. But yeah, no, don't worry about anything about that. Nope, it wasn't an official Black Lives Matter rally or anything like that. And then just again, the preponderance of the evidence, and then just using the colloquial definition of recklessness. It's how a jury in a civil trial would act. That's how they acted in this criminal case. But let's take a look at the jail that she's going to be spending time in, because fuck the rest of these disgusting people with their very this is grassroots support, by the way. These laminated signs by a bunch of people who probably also don't have criminal records. Here's Shakopee Women's Prison in Minnesota. Okay, the specific place of it, okay, it's the only women's prison in the state. It kind of looks like a retirement home, if you ask me, but the dorms are nice, I guess. Prison houses 600 inmates. All 5 custody levels will consist of 10 buildings. You got kind of like a common area, I guess, but other than that, that's a nice little brief insight as to what the confines of Potter's new locations are gonna look like. But yeah, I'm glad that there was justice for Daunte Wright, you know. Yeah, it was. Okay, being serious here for a moment. It was a really, unnecessary situation that happened, that unfolded that day, but it's not like the world was down one of those good ones there that day, okay? Because, yeah, it talked about, Daunte Wright having a previous warrant, okay? He had that order for protection, okay? Obviously, for somebody who he previously robbed, and we'll have more on that lady here very shortly as well. And then he also had another warrant out there as well, okay? He had another crime that he was going to be going to court for very shortly. He shot somebody in the head, by the way. So let's just see the people who aren't going to be getting justice for this, by the way. You hate to see it. He was either going to be killed... he was either going to be imprisoned, kill somebody, or be killed. How Daunte Wright led a life of crime and violence before his death, and shot his own friend in the head, broke into a neighbor's home, and robbed a woman at gunpoint. Good man, by the way, and just, an absolute beacon, and, real boon for the community. Before Daunte Wright was shot and killed by Minnesota police officer Kim Potter, he terrorized his local neighborhood for several years. And he's only 20. Very good. A bastard kid. Wasn't trying to start a family with his baby mama. He was out there fucking random whores on Twitter or Facebook or Tinder. Getting high, having a drug scale in your center console. But none of that stuff matters anymore. He's long gone, but not forgotten, of course. Leaving victims and their family with a lifetime's worth of trauma and suffering. But, hey... his family has justice now, right? And don't come at me with fucking appeals for Kim Potter. Appeals are always just, calls for losers. And they're going to see, the appeals court are just going to see, yep, jury verdict, okay, jury verdict's final, so it's going to be very, very, very slim odds, so, and even if the appeals court in Minnesota does pick this up, Kim's still going to be sitting for a year in fucking jail, by the way. But it is a kind of nice jail. But more on Daunte Wright. Court records and interviews with the victims. Daily Mail can exclusively report that Wright Wright led a life of crime and violence before his death. No! Oh my god. I thought he was just a good boy and a young aspiring family man who was not employed and needed to get $50 for a car wash. And anyways, having been involved in a shooting of two of his school friends, a home burglary, and had previously assaulted and robbed a young woman at gunpoint. You know a little bit about that, but we got a name that, or we got initials that we can put and a face that's there as well. So these are the people who have been victimized by this little boy who was gone and taken from us far too soon. Wright, 20, was shot dead. Yeah, we don't need to go over that stuff again. Yeah, and Potter was found guilty of 2 manslaughter charges, which you could also say was probably just a piling on, or just 2 identical charges, which, you know, oh, whatever. A fatal police-involved shooting had set off angry demonstrations for several days in the Minneapolis suburb of a kid who's, 20 years old, okay, holding a bottle of Hennessy and what you could only assume as at least $25 there. Good kid, by the way. Oh, a very responsible firearm owner. Who would have been to blame if he would have pulled the trigger there, but good trigger discipline in at least one of those 2 pictures. But for some, Wright's death is a reminder that the world kind of occasionally sorts out the wheat from the chaff. He's an evil human being, worse than a monster, a waste of space on Earth. Well, to be fair, though, he's probably just a little bit less of a substantive person now, because he's either decomposed or he's just a little jar of ash somewhere that somebody's mistakenly trying to vape. Have you seen the criminal record of his mother? Jennifer LeMay told DailyMail.com in an exclusive interview. She said her son, Caleb, now 18, is left permanently disabled after Wright, his one-time friend, allegedly shot him in the head at a gas station and left him to die 2 years ago. A lawsuit filed on behalf of her son in May this year describes the fateful events that took place outside the Full Stop convenience store and gas station in May 14th, 2019. The documents state Wright discharged a firearm towards Caleb, striking him with a single shot, bolt in the head. Okay, causing serious disabling and permanent injuries. Doctors told his mom he had a slim chance of surviving the next 24 to 36 hours, but the teen miraculously survived after spending almost 7 months in the hospital. Did he yell taser, taser, taser before he shot into the crowd? According to LeMay, Wright shot Caleb in the frontal part of his head, with a bullet ripping through the other side of his skull, where it is still lodged. Daunte shot my son and left him to die, she said. During the hospital stay, Caleb almost died 6 times because of his injuries. LeMay said 2 boys were good friends, and at one point that Caleb had his first sleepover at Wright's house when he was 13 years old. Aw, that's adorable. The younger Daunte I knew, I thought he was a pretty good kid. I never saw any red flags. Well, that's a mark against you, I guess. The pair eventually grew apart after Caleb and his mom moved to the Chicago area in 2018. Well, didn't we see a bunch of pictures of him wearing a Chicago hat? Daunte obviously has roots in that community. Did he have to cross state lines in order to get that hat? I don't know. Caleb was still in contact with his friend in Minneapolis. It was at the time I started hearing things from my son about Daunte. He was running away from home and on one occasion even spat on his father. Yep, we have text messages to back that up, but that's how Daunte treats his friends. I wonder how he treats his enemies. Oh, more on that in a minute. So I guess, was that the last thing that Caleb would have seen? Don't know. Oh, and there's at least, 60, 70, 80... I don't know, a few bucks, but how do you explain the loose shake and the scale in the center console of the car? Don't know. Daunte lived a lifestyle that didn't have a long lifespan. He was either going to be imprisoned, kill someone, or be killed. His actions and behavior were inexcusable on every level. You live by the sword, you die by the sword. How many lives did he have to destroy? Karma's a bitch, ain't it? She added. That would be Caleb's mother, by the way. She's still not bitter about this, but don't worry, justice has been found in this case. However, she admitted she felt sorry for the young man's family because they lost their child. Yeah, she still has their, a nice mobile houseplant that she can keep around the, to remind her and taunt her of how reckless Daunte Wright was. Wright's death, or rather, he's no George Floyd. I knew him and interacted with him on occasion, she said. George was a gentleman. He didn't assault anyone. He didn't shoot anyone. What the fuck are we talking about? So this idiot's trying to big up George Floyd at the same time. That's weird. Are you sure it was just Daunte Wright who shot just your son, and maybe you don't have a bit of a bullet fragment lodged in your brain as well? Just saying. Just thank God that Daunte didn't do to their child what he did to mine. Months after Wright's death, another woman, identified only as CV, crime victim, sued Wright's estate on November 29th for assault and battery, sexual assault, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. But here's what he's posting on Facebook, by the way. Daunte Wright, grounded for 6 days because I spit on my dad. TSD. I don't know what that means. I guess I'm not of that life. Damn, that shit crazy. I need somewhere to go. I hate my dad. I'm back. Gang shit, man. If my probation officer on dirt, when I get out, I'm done fucking with everyone. Apparently not. He had a lot of fucking left to give, especially this big squared head woman. That was the one that he robbed at gunpoint and then grabbed her tits, I guess. We talked about it more in detail, and this video's getting long enough in the tooth anyways, and I'm about done with this case because it's just been dragging on for fucking weeks. Before leaving, she took the $820 cash of rent money and stuffed it in the side of her bra. I had no idea why I decided to hide the money. I just had a bad feeling, she said. But just as they were all walking out the door to exit the apartment, Wright turned around, blocked the door, and pulled out a black handgun and pointed at the victim and demanded the rent money. According to CV, Wright pointed his gun at her and kept saying, "I know you have the money. Give me the fucking money. We know you have money, and that's what we're here for." Then I looked at Emma J and said to him, "Are you kidding me?" She said. Emma J then said to her, "No, just listen to him, do what he wants, just do it." Pointed a gun at my head, only a few feet away. I stared down the barrel of his gun. I looked him dead in the eyes, and I saw nothing but darkness, pure evil. But hey, that's somebody's son out there. And you know what? That family finally has justice, and that's how Kim Potter's going to be spending Christmas. So if you're a police officer in Minnesota, I'd anticipate probably getting your resume together, and I'd imagine probably at the beginning of the new year, after some people have had some time over the next week or so to contemplate their life choices, I'd imagine we're going to be starting to see a whole host of resignations because, yeah, Derek Chauvin could have been a one-off, but Kim Potter was a model fucking citizen. And now we're at a point where the state doesn't even need to prove the crimes that they're charging. They'll just get it because apparently all cops are bastards, and it doesn't really put two and two together for a lot of people in Hennepin County that, crime spikes are up and we just keep demonizing the police. I don't know what the fuck's going on here, but let's talk about some other shit. I still feel bad for the Potter family. I get it, but I don't get it because the jury's supposed to know the law. But if it gets muddle fucked to you for too long and somebody gets in your ear and you start to see some protests outside, I get it, but I don't get it. It's not a good decision in my opinion. With that said, thank you all very much for the gift of your time. I've been Don Consuelo. I want you to follow your gut and get after it. Take care, everyone.